everybody. Welcome to Before College TV. I'm Harlan Cohn. I have another college conversation this time with three amazing, dynamic, fascinating, charismatic, intelligent, incredible panelists. We have Natalie, Catherine, and Donovan representing Northwestern University, UCLA, and Tulane. Donovan, what's it like in New Orleans?
It's great. It's fun.
Yeah. I mean, I would think that it would be out of control. Like, I don't know. Like, if you're going to college, because there's parties everywhere, I'd be like, isn't there just too much party at Tulane? Is there such a thing?
It can certainly feel like that. It's actually kind of funny. Some people make it a goal to go out every day of the week. Um, and so that's what they'll do. I have not done that yet. But no, I mean New Orleans, if you're looking to party, that's where you go.
Right. I mean, you can find something 24/7, but I mean, there
Mhm.
is an education that people engage with as well, right? Or
Yeah, of
consume,
course.
right? People consume education. Right. I hate to start this with the party. Like, why would I start it with there? Like, of all the directions to go. But you know what? I was thinking, when I think Tulane, I think good times. Do you think that, Catherine?
Yeah, I think
I mean,
so. I
I
think
think,
maybe it's just a Louisiana thing, New
yeah,
Orleans, Mardi Gras, it's the
right.
immediate association.
I mean, it's competitive. I mean, Tulane it's very difficult to get a ticket to Tulane. So, like, I don't want that to go not recognized, right? But Natalie, do you like New Orleans?
I've never been actually.
You've
I've never
never been in
been.
New Orleans.
No.
Oh, well, Donovan, if Natalie wants to come to New Orleans with some friends, is there a
Hmm.
place for her to stay?
I mean, there's a ton.
But not with
Everybody's yeah.
Right. There, there's a lot of hotels.
Yeah, no,
There's
there's zero spots for you to
Airbnbs.
stay.
There's a lot of places. You will be very well taken care of. So, well, that's good to know. We're going to learn about Tulane. We're going to learn all about UCLA because I know a lot of people want to go to UCLA, right, Catherine?
Yeah, I think it's the most applied to school in the country, so
And this year
popular.
especially, I mean, it is hard to get. How we're going to learn how you got in there, but like, what's the secret sauce? Everybody wants to know, how do I get into UCLA, Catherine?
It's a great question. I honestly was not expecting to get into UCLA. I'm from LA. I've lived here my whole life. I didn't even tour it. It probably would have been my dream school, but I really had no expectation going in. But I think that from what I've seen of the people who go here, they really do value students who are well-rounded and do a lot of things, but are also very passionate about academics. So I think that that's sort of the UCLA archetype,
Mm.
so to speak.
Yeah, so you can't want it too badly.
I guess
Right.
I don't know. Yeah.
Right.
It
It's kind
was
of like,
I mean, I was always one of those schools where I would drive through Westwood and I remember saying to my mom one time I had an event or something on UCLA campus and it's like, oh my, if I could get in here, this would be the dream. But I really never imagined that I would be here. So
wow. Well,
yeah.
it's a great place to be. I spent some time in LA and I would hang out in Westwood just because it's fun to be in Westwood.
Yeah.
And there's good food and it's like a great vibe and a cool place. But yeah, so I guess the answer, if you want to go to UCLA, is don't try to go to UCLA. Like, just try and do lots of other things. And it's almost like you got game. It's like dating. It's like, I'm not trying too hard. Like, I don't want you, UCLA, but if you want me, like, okay, make me an offer. It-
Exactly. Yeah. Play a little hard to get. Like
right.
yeah.
Because then I guess you're not too invested and you don't get too disappointed. But that's good. I mean, I think that's a really great message, Catherine, of like just being you and
Mhm.
allowing whatever happens next to happen. Right.
Yeah, totally. And when I started applying to colleges, I was looking at like small liberal arts, like Northeast sort of schools, and just sort of totally the opposite of that. So you really don't know what to expect, I'd say, going into it.
Well, that's fascinating. We're going to learn more about that because clearly you started off looking at a lot of other schools, and I'll be really interested to hear how you ended up choosing UCLA. Well, why do we have to wait? Why do we have to wait? Like, why do we have to tease this? Like, someone's not going to listen. They're going to hang out for another 20 minutes to get that answer. Maybe they will. I don't know. What do you think? You want to tell me now, Catherine?
I can tell you now.
Tell me now. I know Natalie wants to know.
Yeah, no. So I have two older siblings who both went to USC. So there was already some rivalry when I was looking at, where I'd gotten in and what my options were for the UCLA USC thing. And I knew I wanted to stay in California. I'd gone on this whole college trip with my mom, and everywhere we went, I'd say, "This is a great school. It's not in California. I love LA." And then I think sort of the turning point for me was I went to Bruin Day, which is UCLA's Admitted Students Day.
Yeah.
And just talking to the students, it was honestly, it sounds stupid, but it was kind of a vibe thing. People were just really friendly. I felt like a lot of the values that people had here were things that were really important to me. So academically, but as well as like socially and service oriented and that sort of thing. And it also felt really different from what I'd experienced. I went to a small K through 8 school that was my graduating class was like 30 people. And then I went to Viewpoint, which is also pretty small.
Right.
So I felt kind of like I want to try something new when I was just looking at my options.
Bruin Days, is that after you've been admitted?
That's after you've been admitted. So that's their admitted students. They do like this whole extravaganza, so to
Right.
speak.
Because they want you to commit.
Yeah.
Right. That's their sales.
Their selling pitch, exactly.
Exactly. That's everything must go. Everyone must go.
Yeah.
That's how that works. Very interesting. Yeah. And one thing, in addition to being all of those things I mentioned up top, you're all Viewpoint graduates, right? That's where you spent your high school years. So we're going to learn more about that too. So it's great that you're all connecting together. Again, Natalie and Catherine, I know you two are very excited to see each other when we started our conversation. How long has it been since you've seen each other face to face?
Probably graduation, right?
Yeah. It's been a while. Natalie, I think, is the first person I remember meeting at Viewpoint because we were both on the tennis team and I started Viewpoint freshman year. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So was Natalie nice?
Oh yeah, she was super nice. No, it was like made my whole day. I remember the first day of school, we had tennis practice at the end of the day and I'd had a like tough first day kind of thing, like big adjustment, and Natalie was there, super friendly, super nice, made my day. So yeah.
Natalie, do you remember Catherine?
Of course, yeah. We were actually doubles partners for a while. And so we got to know each other really well. And she was the person we like fought with our coach to be like, please let us play together. Because we just wanted to spend more time together and we thought we'd be a good team, which we were. So
Oh, that's so nice. So Natalie and Catherine, were you best friends in high school? I mean, can I ask you that? Is that weird to ask if you're best friends? Like, is there going to be drama if you don't answer the same way?
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't say we were best friends, but we really like bonded over the tennis team. And then I would say I would call her a friend. Like, I guess acquaintances, always friendly. Like, it was always nice to see her.
Exactly.
Right.
We didn't have many classes together ever, I feel like. And it just sort of like, one of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I stopped doing tennis as well because I switched to doing dance and I just didn't have time to do both things. And so that was like the main way that we got to hang out.
Right. Because you make friends when you do things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that's a great lesson for anyone who is watching this, who's in high school, is like, if you do something, you'll meet people like Catherine and Natalie. Like, that's how they met each other. And then Donovan was busy at Viewpoint playing football, playing lacrosse, and he'd be practicing and he would see the tennis players, right? Would you ever see Natalie and Catherine?
I don't think I saw Natalie and Catherine, but I actually played tennis I was on the team for like a couple weeks. I ended up not playing, but no, I remember. I think I remember you guys. At Viewpoint, you kind of see, you kind of know of everyone. You may not know, be close friends or acquaintances with somebody, but I feel like you kind of know of somebody. So your faces definitely look familiar.
You were always older and cooler, Donovan, because you're older,
You can say that.
right? Like, you looked up to. Did you know Donovan when you were in at Viewpoint, Catherine?
I think it was a similar to like what he said about familiar face, but yeah.
Right. Okay, well, good. Well, it's nice to have you all together after all these years. It's a big reunion. This is very exciting. So, Natalie, you're at Northwestern, and we're going to learn all about you and your college journey as well. But going back to Viewpoint, I would love for everybody to get a sense of just who you were. Like, if someone were to describe you, let's say it's like a casting director, and they're trying to just describe Natalie as a character through her upper school years. Can you give us a good sense of just who you were using the most stereotypical, I would say, descriptions?
Um, yeah, I can try. I was definitely the overachiever, the one who never took the easy route and tried to do as much as possible. I never said no, which ended up being a problem for my schedule sometimes, but it was great for my experience, I will say. I was definitely a theater nerd. Did every show possible, every theater arts related class that I could. I would say friendly. Like I tried to like make as many friends as possible in like different areas. Yeah, I don't know if that helps, but
No, that helps a lot. Do you play guitar?
I do. Yeah.
I could see it over your shoulder.
Yes. Yes. That is that right there. I
That's
actually went. I went to the beach with a few of my friends yesterday, and we like played guitar and just hung out, had a little picnic. It was
See, I think
nice.
that's something most people in California don't recognize, that you are in Chicago. I mean, you're in Evanston and you're going to a beach, right?
Right.
Like, do people know that Northwestern is right on the lake, like beautiful lake? Is that something that you were aware of?
I was aware of it. I think once you apply, it's on all the pictures. They try and show all the pictures during summer to be like, this is what it looks like in the spring and summer. Get excited. Winter is definitely not like that. People don't really go to the beach, but now it seems like everyone is going, which
Ooh,
is good
that's
to know.
good. So tell me about that. I want to know, when it's winter, you're from California, you don't know
Yeah,
what winter's like, right, Natalie?
right.
So people are really curious. How bad is it? How do you survive? Is it worth being in the cold to go to a school like Northwestern?
I get that question a lot, especially from people who are applying. They're like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to handle the cold. And I honestly worried the same thing when I was applying, because I'd been in Utah cold, which is not Chicago cold. Chicago gets, in the negatives pretty often throughout the winter. But as long as you have a good coat and you layer up, it's fine. You drink a lot of hot chocolate. It's been my savior. So yeah, it's honestly fine. I think for what the school is, I wanted to be at the school and I wasn't gonna let weather stop me.
Yeah, I agree with you. I have really good warm clothes. I'm not too far from you, but I wear ridiculous outfits, just stupid looking.
Yeah,
Because when it's cold, you can look stupid. No one cares.
yeah, it's kind of great. It's kind of
Yeah,
great. People don't really care about their appearances.
right. And I was kind of digging the whole mask thing this year, because
Mhm.
it kept my nose warm and my mouth warm. Like I think masks in the winter should just be a thing.
Yeah, it was super helpful.
Yeah, surprising bonus. Like, I think fashion statement. I think that's what's going to happen. So we kind of get a sense of you, Natalie. You loved shows. You made a lot of friends performing. And is there someone at Viewpoint who was really helpful when it came to supporting you, nurturing your artistic expression? Is there someone
Mhm.
you can think of, or a class or something that really propelled you?
I think what's really great about the Viewpoint program is that you can make it what you want. And so a lot of it was really just Mrs. Roskowinski and Mr. Felcher, who are, kind of the heads of the acting sequences and classes. They very much handed the reins to the students, and they wanted to be there for what they wanted to do. And so for me, doing shows was always a plus, but really like I got to do an independent study project my senior year where I got to direct and star in a full length show, which I never thought would happen in high school. And there's 24-hour play projects every year where you get to write plays and produce things and direct and act, do whatever you want to do. So I think there are just a lot of opportunities to kind of take control if you want that and grow as much as possible. And they really nurture that.
That sounds amazing. It sounds like fun. I was imagining being there. If you're a first year student in the upper school, do you get opportunities to do this stuff, or is it hard to actually like find your voice?
I mean, you can do whatever you want. The shows are open to anyone, not even just, anyone in the school can audition, no matter your age or anything like that. But also you can there's acting classes and dance classes, and now there's Vocal Point. I'm going to plug it. It's a singing club I started that Maya Farded-Finn is running right now, and it's doing awesome.
You
But
started a club?
yeah, it was a singing club because there are morning classes for singing. There's a vocal jazz ensemble and a contemporary voice ensemble, but those are technically classes. And for people who ride the bus, like I rode the bus for a long time, I wasn't able to wake up early and go. And so I kind of just created a club I heard like a lot of people were having the same struggle that I was, wanting to sing more on campus, but not having the space to. And so that's the thing now, which is really fun.
Oh, so what's
Yeah,
the name
but
of the
anyway,
club again?
it's called Vocal Point.
Vocal Point. So when people are singing in Vocal Point, I want you to think of Natalie struggling, being so frustrated that there was no place to sing in the morning, right? That's what happened, right?
Yeah.
And then you just started it and it still exists.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. That's so fun. So let's go to Donovan. I feel like Donovan, we really haven't heard from you in a while. And I know you're aching to contribute. I can tell. You're just you're like, when do I get in on this? So Donovan, take me back to Viewpoint. Take me back to your days walking around the halls, participating in your after school activities. Describe you. Also, I want to know if you were shy, if you were, out there, if you were, like just give us a flavor of Donovan.
If I go back to my freshman year at Viewpoint, because I was coming from a predominantly Black and Hispanic middle school, so it was a crazy transition. I mean, not to be like overtly cliche, but I was, obviously young, naive, very wide-eyed. I kind of became a people pleaser just because I wanted to fit in. I did a lot of stuff with hopes that I would fit in, at least my freshman year. But I was able to really find a community early on at Viewpoint through football. I remember like one of the first people I met, his name's Pablo. He's a freshman just like me. And like we were like two of the tiniest kids on the football team. And like we always got paired up in all like the hitting drills and whatnot. Beyond just Pablo, I mean, the whole football team just became a community. I don't know if you play sports tennis, obviously, that it's camaraderie that you don't really get in a classroom. It easily could have been theater. It easily could have been, book club. Like if like whatever interests you, just seek that community first. And then there's a better chance, obviously, that you'll, find yourself a community because you're tied by your passions. But yeah, I would say football characterized a lot of my high school years. Football shaped me to become, less of a people pleaser, just more independent, become myself, and also know what it's like to be a part of a team, which is also very important because my senior year at Viewpoint, I became really into film. I got really into film and I was in all the film classes, and a teacher that really helped, guide me into the realm of film, Miss Honig. She was our teacher for the final like culminating film year for the seniors, and we had made a short film and all that good stuff. And now I'm obviously a film major at Tulane, and so that heavily directed me those experiences I gained in high school. But yeah, I mean, so you'll experience things in high school. You'll see, whatever you like beforehand going into high school, you'll experience it in high school and figure out if you want to keep it or leave it. And then that'll just guide your experience. It's not as simple as that, but I'm trying to keep it as simple as that.
Yeah. Were you pretty, I mean, you seem pretty chill right now.
Yeah.
Like, were you this chill in high school, or were you a little more uptight? I don't even like the word uptight, but like, I mean, stressed out.
Not necessarily uptight, but I probably, before I knew what a type A personality was, I probably was that, just because even now it took me a while to to uninstill in my head that like school is everything I got to get the perfect grades. I got to be real meticulous with my assignments. It took me a while to get out of that phase. But yeah, especially in high school, and being at a school like Viewpoint, which was a crazy adjustment academically from my middle school, I definitely felt like I had to keep up. And so I worked, I did my best to, fill that gap that I had going into Viewpoint.
Yeah. So
And so, yeah. Mhm.
yeah, it's interesting. I got a bunch of questions. Uh, Trying to please people is rough. I don't know. Are you a pleaser, Natalie?
Yeah,
Olivia?
I would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Catherine?
Oh yeah,
You're all so
I'm a huge loser. Yeah.
we got four pleasers. I don't know, Donovan. Maybe you're a former
A farmer, yeah. I'm
right
retired.
retired pleaser.
Yeah.
But I think that's a hard thing. That's a hard thing to do because you always disappoint people. It's like I always disappoint myself, and I'm working hard. Even now, I got a lot more years under me than all of you. I get inspired because even a day like today, I was beating myself up. Like I'm like trying to be fit, and I was on like this no sugar thing for a while just because it works well for me. And my birthday was recent. My birthday was actually yesterday. Like dating
Oh, happy
everybody.
belated.
Happy birthday! Yeah.
It's fine. Or actually, it wasn't yesterday. It's a lie. It was 2 days ago. Wow, I've lost all credibility. And I ate a lot of sugar. I had some sugar on my birthday, and like it woke up the beast. And then today I had too much sugar, and I'm like, dude, I can't eat the sugar. But I beat myself up because I was like an overweight kid when I was younger, and that stuff. This isn't a therapy session for me, but the point is, there is a point to all of this. Is that it's wonderful to recognize that the first person we have to please is ourselves. And when you're a pleaser, I think a lot of times that's something we don't recognize. And I've been working hard on that. And it sounds like you've all found really great communities, from the communities you find at Viewpoint to the communities that you're finding in your school. So anyway, Donovan, that was really nice. Um, I'm curious about the film piece. Did you have to put together a film to get into Tulane? Did you have to like show them something or interview for that particular major?
Yeah, so at Tulane, because I was obviously passionate about film, but my initial application to Tulane was I was pursuing a field in the music industry. I was looking to be an A&R, manage artists, work as an agent, connecting artists to companies like Sony, all that stuff. And the cool thing about Tulane is you can your like first 2 years you can take classes in any school, like whether it's School of Liberal Arts, business, science and engineering, medical stuff. And so I didn't necessarily apply to Tulane through as like a film student. I applied. I applied for undecided business as that was like my track, and with the idea that I would take music business classes, but realized Tulane didn't have a plethora of music industry classes. And then I heard about the digital media production department. And that I was actually talking to the head of the department who basically told me about film and what they were doing. And so I was, thought back to how fun it was to work on the short film back at Viewpoint. And I was like, oh, seems like a match. And 3 years later.
That's also a thing. You wanted to go into music and go into A&R and be on the agent side, but you picked a school that didn't have that. So
Mhm.
like, how did that happen? And this is, I mean, for
Yeah.
anybody else who's like has an interest or a passion, and then realizes like, whoa, this is a great school, but they don't have what I really love to do.
hmm Yeah. So it's actually pretty crazy how Tulane came about because I was interested in USC, UCLA, all the main ones, NYU, University of Miami, all the main ones. And I had gotten nominated for this scholarship program called the Posse Foundation. You may have heard of it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I love the Posse Foundation.
yeah, it's great. And so got the nomination. I mean, obviously, my dad, when he heard, full tuition scholarship, he was like, "Oh, you're applying to this." And so I did all the various application interview stages, and that ended up just working. and it's obviously binding. So and because we apply early decision, so it's like, if you get it, you got to go. And so once I got in, it was like got to drop all the other applications. And so that's I kind of just at first it was more just an idea. It was like, oh, can I really do this? And then it was like it happened, and so I ended up in New Orleans.
Oh, that's awesome. So the Posse Foundation, the way that works is you apply to certain schools, or do they place you at certain schools? Like
Yeah.
how does that work?
So yeah, once you're in, it's been so long since I've been through it, but yeah, you get the nomination, and then you basically do a series of interviews, put you in big rooms for to start off, and then obviously as each phase goes on, it gets smaller and smaller. But after like during the process, once it gets to a certain amount of people, then you can put in your, the schools you're interested in. And I believe I had Tulane. I think UCLA was. I think it used to be a posse school. I'm not sure if it is now. I know Berkeley was, but you were just able to rank like your top 5 schools, and I put Tulane on top, and it was like Berkeley, and there were a few other schools like Dickinson. Uh, I can't even remember the other ones, but Tulane was obviously the most notable. Tulane and UC Berkeley, because a lot of Viewpoint and private school kids apply to those 2 schools. And yeah, so I just put Tulane as my number one, and then you do application. You do like the interview process for Tulane applicants, and then it gets smaller and smaller, and then you actually apply to the school and do a meeting with all the heads of the admissions at Tulane, and then you got the phone call.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. I'm so excited to know that you're part of the Posse Foundation,
Yeah,
because
thanks.
I just think they do amazing. I think they do incredible work. And I'm really interested to hear about your transition to college and just how that played a role in you finding your people and places. So I'm definitely gonna circle back to that. But that's a cool story. I love that. So Catherine, so your years at Viewpoint, was there someone in your corner who was influential, who really helped you through your Viewpoint years, but then continued to be in your corner?
I feel like there were several people. The first person who comes to mind is Dr. Steiger, who was my AP US history teacher junior year. And I had always loved history. And he was someone who I would go to his class pretty much every day after school, and we would just talk about history. And then you'd talk about school and college, because I was starting to think about college. Now I'm at UCLA studying history, and I'm a second year, but I'm considering getting a PhD, and so he was, I think I take history tests sometimes, and I think of stuff that he told me or taught me, and he was the person who I was really going to when I was trying to decide where to go to college. I'm just super thankful that he was my teacher. So yeah.
What made him so approachable and so easy to talk to?
I think that there was a class where I disagreed with something that he said, and that led me to go to his class after school. And we just had this really long discussion all about that. And then from there, it was kind of one of those things where it's like, oh, if I can disagree with him and we can discuss and talk this out, he's a great person to talk to.
That's really fun. I love that it was a disagreement that helped you to get to know.
Yeah, well, and it was one of those things where there are other teachers who I can think of who I would have gone into, and they would have talked to me about it, but it just would have been a very different conversation. But, he wanted to hear what I had to think and why I thought that and that whole thing. So it was definitely.
Yeah, he's like, thank you for disagreeing.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that you have a thought,
Yeah, exactly.
which makes it really safe.
Yeah.
That's great. So you think of Dr. Steger when you're taking tests, like you actually
Yeah.
like he runs.
Well, or like, I'll think about something that he taught us in junior year history that's somehow coming up now. And I'm like, wow, it's great that I learned that then, because, we didn't discuss that in this class. And now I can use that piece of information to further my argument or something, or
I
just
love that.
even.
Is there a
Yeah.
specific example, like a specific historical event or something that I know I'm really asking you to open up the
No, yeah.
like I love specifics. It's interesting.
I'm not gonna. There were like several instances, and now I'm totally drawing a blank. But
It's
yeah,
it's a
just
hard.
several moments, even also in class discussions, where I'll be like, "Ooh, I have something good to say that I remember from taking that class," kind of thing.
So you're able to practice a little bit,
Yeah,
Viewpoint, and then in your UCLA classes, you were able to pull that back out, and no one knew. No one
yeah.
knew this was this was the second time.
No. And then I looked like I had this really insightful position when really it was just something that.
That's perfect. And then you were very athletic. You still may be athletic. I'm not saying that you're not athletic now. I'm
Thanks.
only I'm only looking at the things that you had shared, and I know that you were in tennis, and I know that you were when you're doing beach volleyball, and what else? You're just very active. Do you still do anything athletic at UCLA?
I still play tennis with friends, which is a great way to sort of meet people. I'm not on any sort of teams or anything though, but I actually, my dorm looked over the tennis courts of UCLA. So it was sort of this funny moment. And then it would be, I'm in the dining hall talking to this person, and somehow tennis comes up. And that's a really easy sport where you can just go out and play with somebody. So it's definitely been a nice social thing for me.
Oh, so you'll still play.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So you've got the courts close by, so you could just can you go on those courts? They let you just play?
Yeah. Now you just reserve one. At the start of quarantining stuff, they took all the nets off because they didn't want people to play. So now and then you couldn't, but now, yeah, it's back open.
Right, you could have. It just would have been a very different game.
Exactly.
A lot
Yeah.
of honor and trust that did make it over. So that's cool. So many things. Oh, you're all so interesting. And I love that you are so you're involved with charitable organizations and service, and we'll talk about that. But Natalie, I want to learn a little bit more about you and your college application process, how you were able to get into Northwestern, but also you said you were a type A. I think you said you're a little type A, right? Were you not type A? Was that someone else who's type A?
That might
Donovan
have been,
might
but
have
I
been.
relate. I do relate.
Right. So you're an achiever.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's what you said. Is that what you said?
Yeah. Yeah. I said I'm an overachiever.
You're an overachiever, right? Which I think sometimes I associate with like kind of a type A because you just, have that perfectionist pleaser kind of thing, which
Mhm.
can be exhausting. So I'm curious to or wonderful and amazing. No judgment, right? I mean, like whatever works for you. But I want to know when it came to going through the whole college search and application and selection process, can you walk us through how you were able to approach that?
The only difference for me is that I was specifically looking at theater programs. And so the difference there is there were a lot of extra steps for me of scheduling auditions and getting ready my monologues and my songs, and um, just like a lot of extra and early deadlines. So I had to like plan everything out. And so I got an extra college counselor outside of campus, who specialized in that, just because I had no idea what I was doing. And no one in my family has gone for theater. Like, it was a very new thing. We were all kind of in the dark. So she helped us with that. She was actually a Viewpoint parent, Susie Wynn. I don't know if you know Isabel Wynn, but it's her mom. So she helped me. And also my college counselor on campus, Mr. Mahareb, is incredible. I love him so much. And I actually called him like a week ago. I was like, hey, how are you? But yeah, it was really just at first looking at theater programs, and I realized there's a whole difference between conservatories and liberal arts programs like BAs and BFAs, where I didn't know what I wanted. And I realized that I very much care about academics, and I wanted a program that had both, and opportunities to maybe minor in something or double major, or join clubs and have that college experience rather than jumping into something that felt like work right off the bat. Which for some people that's awesome, but for me, I just wanted to have somewhat of a normal student life as well as the acting thing. And so Northwestern was one of those programs where it really offered a strong theater program and strong academics. So that's the reason that I was drawn to it. But there were other programs like NYU and Michigan, and other places that had both as well.
So the difference between the two, will you help me to understand that? Because I want other people to
Yeah.
understand the difference as well.
Yeah, of course. So BAs are basically Bachelor of Arts degree. It's 50% of your curriculum is theater and 50% is outside general ed requirements. You take things in all types of categories and still get that liberal arts education. And if it's a BFA, that means it's a conservatory. So it's 80% arts related, and the rest are the general ed requirements.
Great. That's helpful. Yeah, that's something I don't think most people understand. So where did you apply, and where did you get in and where did you not get in? Are you comfortable sharing that?
Yeah, well, I applied early decision here. So the only
Oh,
other school I heard back from was my safety school, which was Indiana University. And I did get in there. Um, but I applied to, I don't remember how many, probably like 12 schools, 14 schools, something like that. It was, they tell you to do a mix of like target schools, which are in your range, and reach schools. And for me, anything that had an audition was automatically a reach school because you never know what they're thinking and what they're looking for. So that made it a little bit difficult, but I realized kind of halfway through that I had a lot of colleges on my list that I wasn't excited about that were in my target range. And I was more excited about my safety than I was about my target schools. So I was like, I'm not going to apply here because that doesn't make sense to put
yeah.
in that extra work.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
I like that. So there were these schools that you applied to that you weren't really excited about,
Mm-hmm.
and then why did you apply?
Well, I didn't end up applying, but
Right.
there were a few that for a while were on my list, and I just researched them, and I really wasn't. There was nothing that I was excited about them, and they were really just there to fill, the goal of having a certain amount of target schools.
So your dream schools were, one of them was a reach and the other one was a likely school. There's someone who I was talking to, her name is Denise Pope, who talks about uh, when students put their lists together to have their dream schools, and then instead of safety schools, they're likely schools that they like, that they're likely to get into,
Yeah.
and then matching that up with the idea that if you have dream schools, and I always encourage students to find 5 dream schools and make sure that 2 of those dream schools are likely,
Mm.
because then you'll always live your dream, because that's the goal is, you're in charge of your dream, no one else. And I love that when you were approaching your college decision, you had Northwestern and then you had Indiana, which you would have been really happy going to Indiana, it sounds like.
Maybe. I mean, you never know. I will say, like, all of the places that I was really, really excited about, like most excited about, were all reach schools. I mean, you got to try.
Yeah.
There was never someone who told me, don't try to get in there, or you can't do that, which I think was helpful. But I do know some people who have that experience, which I just think is really unfair because you never really know how the college process is going to turn out. So I'd say if you're excited about a place, you try your hardest and hope for the best.
Yeah, you try and you swing, and if you get rejected, who cares? I'm like the king of rejection. So I think it's great. Rejection just means you tried. Doesn't mean you're not worthy or good enough. And you could always end up going there, figuring out how to find a way to be there. I think there's always a way. So then you ended up selecting Northwestern and for early decision. And did you have to audition for Northwestern during the application process?
So I didn't audition, but I did do like a portfolio that was optional for musical theater specifically. So I don't know how much they take that into account or not, but yeah, I submitted a monologue and 2 songs, and I think like an extra essay, a video of me playing guitar, things like that.
Neat. So you actually put together a video of you singing, or was it from a production?
No, I put together a video.
So you just
Yeah.
stood in front of the camera and just sang.
Yep. Like I've been doing all of this year. Yeah.
Right, right. Was that weird
Yeah.
to do, or was it natural for you?
It was definitely weird. It was definitely weird. I haven't had too much film experience, so it was also, most of my experience is on a stage. So having just like the camera in front of you, you can get very judgmental about yourself and
Totally.
be like, oh, well, it's on film. I'm just going to try 20 more takes and be here all day. And that's the annoying part of it. But at a certain point, usually I end up picking one of the first takes anyway. So you have
Right.
to find
It's the most.
yourself. You know.
So are you on social media? Of course you are. But like, is there a place where we could, where do you perform? Do you give people a little taste of, some of your talents anywhere?
I do have an Instagram where I don't have too many videos of me performing, but I guess they're there.
Your Instagram, right? Because we've included your social media with this. All of you are kind enough to share your social media. So if there's anybody who has questions about anything that we've been talking about, are you comfortable with people reaching out to you?
Yeah,
Everybody, Natalie, you're comfortable. Catherine, you're good. Donovan, you're okay with people reaching out to you?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I just want to make sure that anyone who's watching, like, these people are in your corner. Like, you want people to be successful, right? Like, all of you. I mean, I know I do. Is Northwestern, the theater department, is it super competitive? Like, are people nice to
yeah.
each other, or are they like, sabotaging each other?
No, there's no sabotaging happening. I will say that. I was worried about that. I was very much worried about that. There were a few auditions that I had like first few weeks of school. They really like push you into it, and auditions happen like the second week that you start. Like it's really sudden. And I remember going into it like not telling people what I was going to sing, being really hush hush because I didn't know what the culture was, and being scared that people would steal your songs or people would badmouth you or whatever. So I just like kept to myself. Um, but now being here for a little bit, it's definitely competitive just because the bar is so high. Everyone's so talented here, but it's definitely not cutthroat. Everyone's very supportive of one another, and we want to make art together. That's the whole point. So
Oh, that's nice. That's a good feeling. Everyone's going to want to go to Northwestern. To be in the theater program, because those programs can be super competitive and challenging. So being away from home, I know that Natalie, you're a little further away. Donovan, you're probably pretty far away too. I mean, New Orleans is not close to Los Angeles. It's probably about the same flight. I wonder how many miles. I wonder who wins that one. I know, Catherine, you don't. Uh, you're not even competing for
I won't
distance
try and
there.
compete. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's not a competition, but you're both a plane ride away. So I like that we have different perspectives on what it's like to be far away and what it's like to be a drive away, which can also seem very far away. And I know, Catherine, we were talking a little bit, and, you know, it wasn't the easiest transition for you, from what I understand, that first year. Is that true?
Yeah, I was expecting not to be homesick at all. I'm like 20 minutes away from home. But it was kind of a shock. I was also the only person from my Viewpoint graduating class to go to UCLA. So I didn't know anyone going in. That was a lot, and it just felt really big and overwhelming, especially that first week. And I sort of wanted to make a rule for myself where I wasn't going to go home because I wanted to have that time to adjust. Yeah, there was definitely, I'd say, like a 2-week adjustment period where things felt super unfamiliar and like a lot, even though I was so close to home. But after that, I'd say things started on an upward trend.
Yeah, but it's hard. It could be very lonely. I don't think people understand that and talk about that. And I know when I had the chance to visit Viewpoint, I mean, I try to explain that, but I don't think until you're actually there do you realize, like, it's weird to not have any friends and to not know people and to not have that connection and community. So Catherine, how were you able to work through that? How did you get through those first 2 weeks, and how did you find your people and your places at UCLA?
I got super lucky. I had a random roommate, uh, and she's my best friend. I live with her now. And the UCLA survey asking, for a random roommate is just like, what room or what temperature do you like the room? Really basic questions like that. And I just got insanely lucky. I was also supposed to be in a triple. Basically, everything at UCLA is a triple, and our third roommate just never showed up. So we got a double. So I just really hit the jackpot there. And then I joined a sorority, which at UCLA starts we have 0 week in the fall. So that was also super helpful. during 0 weeks, because 0 week you don't have classes, and it was just nice to have a place to go and something to do during that time, where I felt like, I know that I have these things planned and I'm going to be talking to people. And just meeting people in the dorms. I took a class called a cluster, which is all freshman students. And that was super helpful because I would see people that I knew from the dorms in this class every Tuesday and Thursday, and it's a year-long course. So I got to know those people really well. And yeah, I'd say those were the main things for me.
That's great. It's hard to just walk up to someone and say hi
Yeah.
and start a conversation. So, like, do you remember the earliest days? Like, how did you do that? Because the question that I get from students when they're seniors and they're graduating is, how do I make friends? How do I find someone to sit with when I don't know anyone, especially coming from a smaller community? And many students at Viewpoint have been there their entire academic lives, or most of it, or a good part of it. Do you remember how you talk to people and what that felt like? So to get really specific so other people can understand.
Yeah. And I'm a pretty shy person. It's hard for me to just go up to people that I don't know and talk to them. So I definitely felt super nervous those first few days. I think going to at least my dorm had several dorm events and that sort of thing. And so going to those where everyone is new and everyone's on the same playing field, and people, you realize once you get there that people want to talk to you. Nobody else knows anybody. It's not weird to go up and say, I know or at least for me, it felt super weird to just go up to somebody and start talking to them. So I think sort of taking cues from other people that were more comfortable doing that and realizing, it's okay if I just go say hi to this person who's sitting by themselves, outside or whatever. They're not going to think I'm crazy if I do that. Doing that sort of thing, going to dorm events where it might feel like an awkward situation, but just sort of starting to talk to people, and even just going up to people in the dining hall who are eating alone and saying hi to them and seeing if, can I sit here kind of conversation.
You did that?
Yeah. Well, UCLA, I don't know if this is an all dining hall things, but UCLA has long tables. So it's not really like you can just go sit at your own table. So you always kind of have to be sitting next to somebody, which can be helpful in terms of, talking to new people.
So people are friendly. So anyone who's all freaked out and like, I have to sit at a long table with someone I don't know, and it's really scary, because there's a lot of students, I'm sure, Viewpoint grads who go to really big schools that are really far away. And that's really scary. I think it is. I mean, am I exaggerating that, or am I being accurate? Yeah. So Natalie, going from California to Evanston, did you know anybody at Northwestern?
I knew like 2 people. There was one person from my high school, from my grade, who also was coming with me and I was friends with, but we deliberately decided to live separately. And then, it was actually a really smart decision, because then we made our own friends and we got to meet each other's friends and create these bigger circles, and also have each other to lean on when we needed, which was a nice comfort thing. But I also the first friends I made were with my orientation group, because Northwestern does this thing where for a week they put you into groups of 7 or 8 people within similar majors, if not the same major, and you basically do everything together. You register for classes together, go to events, learn the school chants, and go to football games together. You just go through the week, and you have a point person who is a grade or 2 above you to answer any questions as well. So that was really helpful for me, just calming down and getting settled. I was very nervous going in, because I assumed college was just a really big deal and everything was more important, and I was just nervous about making wrong steps, I guess. It was really nice having someone to answer all my questions.
So you had a lot of big fears about, was it social fears more than anything?
I don't know. I think it was in general the idea of college. I built it up so much in my head. And so I even had talks with my brother beforehand, who was already in college, and asked him how he deals with it, how I assumed every assignment was more important. And anything you say to a professor is going to be checked by them. So I think I went in with my guard up. And as soon as I got like an email from my advisor, my like mentor, who was just like, "Hi, welcome to the school," and wrote this really nice message. And I like calmed down as soon as I got that email. I was like, "There's someone I can talk to. There's someone I can ask my questions," especially because I asked a question just to test if they actually wanted me to ask questions. And then they wrote like an essay of a response. And so I actually asked all of my questions and felt very supported. And then I felt more open to just talking to people and being myself.
Well, that's great. So the lesson is to actually ask some questions and not just keep those feelings inside, because you'll be pleasantly surprised that people are going to be a lot nicer and more accessible than you probably even realized or
Definitely.
realize. Yeah, that's really cool. So did you get homesick, Natalie, being so far away from home?
I actually didn't, but I had been to a lot of summer camps and just like intense theater programs far away from home. So I did have experience with that. It felt like a summer camp to me, um,
Mm.
especially first quarter because they threw in a parents' weekend and the quarter is not that long in quarter system. So I wasn't gone for that long before I got to go back home.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Donovan, so tell me a little bit about you leaving Viewpoint, going to Tulane. Did you know people there?
Yeah, so the way Posse works, you go into the program with, or you go into the semester with 9 other people, and you spend the summer, getting a really strong relationship with those 9 other people, and then you essentially just take over campus. And obviously, there's each Posse year, so you're cool with the 10 other kids in the grade above you, and then 2 grades above you, 3 grades, and so on. Um, and I ended up rooming with. They said, "Oh, maybe you shouldn't room with people in Posse," but I was just really cool with one other person, and so we ended up rooming together freshman year, um, sophomore year as well. Now we have a house or an apartment together. And honestly, to speak to any seniors that are apprehensive about being social, making friends, and whatnot, um, a good chunk, and I'm sure you guys will agree, a good chunk of the college experience is networking. And that's a skill that if you don't build up in college, I would say you're definitely gonna have a tough time at post college in the job industry, like whatever you want to pursue. And so I just say it's a very uncomfortable thing, obviously, going up to somebody and saying, "Hey, you want to be friends?" or "Hey, what do you like to do?" And then forming a friendship based on that. But a big thing about college is you kind of have to get comfortable doing those uncomfortable things. And I mean, the whole campus will open up to you once you're able to just cross that that awkward tension, because it only really lasts for like 1 or 2 seconds, and then when you're actually in conversation, it's just like, "Oh, why don't I just do this all the time?" but um but yeah, so I'm sure, like, same with like UCLA, Northwestern, Tulane has like a big opening week type of deal. A lot of parties, obviously. And I don't recommend this, but if you're definitely more on the introverted side, one of my close friends, like, on weekends and stuff, when there's parties and all that stuff, he would chug 5-hour energies and just talk to as many people as he could. Um, I don't recommend that. But if you want to actually get out of your shell and force yourself to, like actually meet friends, that's an option.
5 hour energy. Right. Well, I mean, it's right. That's an option. Right. We'll put a big disclaimer and a big warning
Yeah.
under that. But that's great. You had the Posse Foundation. You had your group, and they really helped you. So you walked in knowing people, and then you knew people older than you, which is great. And then Catherine, eventually you had your sorority. You had the cluster program that helped you, and I think those are the big couple. Those were your two things that helped you for the first couple weeks. And then Natalie, you had the program over the summer that helped you, the week program with those students, the smaller cohort, right?
Yeah, I did do a summer program the year before my senior year, and a lot of people from that ended up at Northwestern, which was really great because I would just see familiar faces, even if I wasn't close with them.
Yeah.
They were familiar faces, which is nice.
Yeah, that's great. So just that theme of finding your places and really being intentional about putting yourself in those spaces, knowing it's going to take a couple weeks or sometimes a couple months, right? Like, I mean, I think that Catherine, yours was really fast. A couple weeks is I mean, that's wonderful that you're able to get through that. I know that it can take some time. So when you look back at your Viewpoint experience and your transition to college, is there anything that you could think of specifically that really helped to prepare you to be equipped to handle whether it's the social dynamics or it's the classroom setting? And I know, Catherine, you kind of touched on that a little bit of just the academic piece and how Dr. Steiger was someone who really helped you to prepare without you even realizing it. But are there other experiences that you can connect and say, you know, this really helped me to be equipped for life in college? Natalie, is there anything that comes to mind?
For me, I think academically, Viewpoint was a place that I always said the best part of it were the teachers. And Dr. Steiger was someone who I also admired a lot, and as well as Mr. Rush was one of the physics teachers, and he was a really big mentor for me. And in general, it was just a place where you had to take a lot of tests constantly and do a lot of work. And I think that itself helped me because it was a more rigorous school academically to just be on top of things here. And I created this strategy with my mom because we had summer readings at Viewpoint where I would schedule out days like hour by hour and see what I could get done in a day while like still giving myself breaks and taking time for myself, because sometimes you forget how much time you have in a day and it's easy to get really overwhelmed with a million things that you have to get done. My mom actually taught me this, but it was just realizing you actually have 6 hours right now to like get a bunch of stuff done. So like how much can you do reasonably, and setting those boundaries for yourself and realizing that, you know, you have the ability to do so, and rather than getting really frustrated with the bigger picture and then not getting anything done.
So you practice managing your time the summer before college? Is that what you did?
Honestly, all the summers throughout high school, because we did have like AP work and summer readings and things like that sometimes I would find overwhelming. So for me, that was really helpful, and it's something that I still do in college.
That's great. Catherine, is there anything that you can think of your Viewpoint experiences that carried over into your college years that really helped you?
Especially at a bigger school, but really any school, I didn't have this fear about going and talking to my TAs or professors in the same way because I was used to going in and talking to my teachers at Viewpoint. So that was super helpful. I talked to my TA and I ended up interning for a company that he started. So just building those sort of relationships in that sense was really useful. And I think I carried that over from Viewpoint, especially my freshman year at Viewpoint. I was incredibly more shy, and just remembering that transition and realizing that people aren't as scary as they may seem, sort of thing. I think that was really helpful to me, and just sort of recognizing that people want to make friends, and if people aren't friendly to you, you know, that's on them and you can just walk away. And especially the nice thing about UCLA is I can walk away and I never have to see that person I had an awkward interaction with ever again, you know? So realizing that was really helpful as well.
Yeah, that's incredibly helpful. And then getting to UCLA, and I know we touched on it a little bit. Were there other schools that you were interested in? Or I know you said UCLA was one of them and you started to get to know UCLA. Did you apply to other schools? Because I'd love to know where you got in, where you didn't get in, if you're comfortable sharing.
When I started looking at colleges, I think I mentioned before, I wanted something small Northeastern. And so my mom and I went on a college tour and we went to like Swarthmore and Haverford and Bowdoin and all those. And I did really like those, and I still applied to some of those, but it kind of funnily came down to, in the end, the schools that I was really looking at were UCLA, USC, and Scripps. I had a really difficult time deciding. I'm super indecisive. Think I committed on April 30th, right before May 1st, sort of thing. And I had what felt like sort of this family pressure to go to USC because I did have two siblings who went there. And USC is an amazing school. Both of my siblings loved it, but it just didn't feel like the right place for me. And then Scripps sort of felt more comfortable to me because it was small. And I remember going to visit and it felt like Viewpoint, which felt super comfortable. And actually, the tennis coach, Travis, he has this mantra that he'll sort of just repeat throughout the season, which is you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And I was like, I want to try something that feels a little bit uncomfortable, but is still something that I know is going to be an amazing experience. UCLA also, I started as a classics major and they had a classical civilizations major specifically, which is what I was most interested in doing. It was less emphasis on the language and was kind of unique to UCLA. So that was also an influence in choosing. And I think the location, I really wanted to be in LA and I love Westwood. So yeah.
So you got into USC and you got into UCLA and you got into Scripps as well.
Mm-hmm.
So so did you get rejected from any schools?
I applied to Duke. My dad went to Duke and I didn't get in there. I got waitlisted at several schools. I got waitlisted at Berkeley. I got waitlisted at Rice. Yeah, it feels weirdly long ago. And then I also got into UC Santa Barbara and Davis and like some other, like Boston College, some other schools like that. So yeah, Haverford. Yeah.
It's so funny how little it matters right now to you.
Right. And it felt like the biggest deal in the world opening those. And now it just doesn't even matter. Yeah.
Because you found a place and you're always going to have a place.
Exactly. And that's the thing. And I was so indecisive and I feel like I chose and I never looked back, and I really liked it. And I know people who transfer and that's like great for them. So it's kind of one of those things where it feels like this unbelievably huge decision, but I think it really does all work out in the end. Even if it doesn't work out for your freshman year, there are still a lot of options.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I think it's really important. And I think that, some people might be like, oh, it's easy for Catherine to say she's at UCLA,
Yeah.
but you have friends in lots of other places, I imagine as well, right?
Yeah, no, all over. And yeah, I know people who, both my siblings actually transferred to USC. So they didn't enjoy their first years and they ended up somewhere that they really loved. So yeah. And then I know somebody else who goes, I have one of my best friends goes to college in London and I never imagine being in London for university, but she adores it. So everyone finds their place,
Yeah, that's great. Thanks again for sharing that. So Donovan, when it comes to your experiences at Tulane connected to your Viewpoint experience, are there things that you were able to carry over that helped you to be successful at Tulane?
Yeah, academically, obviously, it wouldn't necessarily make me like perform at a high level, but it would make it so I'm able to, get all my assignments done, do good on tests, all that good stuff. I would say Viewpoint definitely helped me in that aspect. In Tulane is honestly has a similar, it's like a medium campus size. I couldn't tell you how many people exactly are in the undergrad population, but it feels like, you see the same people every day. You don't necessarily, you may not know people, but you know people actually, but you know of them. And so I guess I was able to transfer that over to Tulane from Viewpoint. And I think that's a good and bad thing. Like I was able to, be prepared for just being surrounded by the same people. But at the same time, I know that from my Viewpoint experience, I don't necessarily have to be friends with all of them. Like if that makes sense. Like I can, have my friend group and, not necessarily go out of my way to become like a certain person in order to appease a certain group. And so, yeah, academically and student body wise, those are the two primary things I was able to carry over from Viewpoint.
I feel like having you, Donovan, is a bonus. Not only do I get to talk to you about your college experience, but I'm just like over the moon posse fan. I think it's the coolest thing. It's people, places, patience. It's like you're part of this amazing community. You're supported. It's everything that it's everything I advocate, and I just love that you're part of it. And I'm just so curious, when you arrive on campus, can you just kind of like real quickly, like just rapid fire, run the
Yeah.
list? So if there's a kid who's like, I didn't even know this existed,
Mhm.
they could all of a sudden, this could be the thing that sparks their dream.
Yeah. It's called the Posse Foundation. You could just look up Posse Foundation on Google. There's definitely a lot of perks. It was a big commitment. Once you go through the interview process, which occurs during the fall semester of your senior year of high school, once you go through all of that stuff, then you get into Posse. I did early decision with Tulane, so I found out like December, whatever day that was. And then you have to commit to weekly, like once a week meetups with your posse with 9 other people at like the posse headquarters in downtown LA. And then you just get a really strong relationship with them. And that's where I got really built a really strong relationship with my roommate that I have now. And once you get to campus, there are a lot of resources. They have their own like college counseling branch, kind of like they have like a job board with like internships, resume workshops, cover letters, all that good stuff. Like you get your own college advisor. And then on campus, you have a posse mentor, and they'll most likely be a professor. And our posse mentor was great. Like we'd go over to her house and she'd cook us dinner. Um, she'd, give us a ride. Like my my posse mentor just giving me a ride to go get vaccinated. And so yeah, you just get it's really just a family. And the cool thing about it is there's also a New Orleans posse. And so kids from New Orleans will apply to their posse schools, and Tulane is one of them. And so not only do you have the Tulane LA network, but you have the the New Orleans posse network. But yeah, I mean, anybody who is willing to put in the work for a full tuition, scholarship, uh, definitely look into the Posse Foundation.
I mean, it's amazing, the ability to speak and to really be confident and articulate who you are and share that. Is that something you were able to do before the interview? Was there a particular class or something that you did at Viewpoint that really helped you to practice those skills?
I was definitely more English oriented at Viewpoint, and because I'm a digital media production and English double major at Tulane, and so English has always been something I'm passionate about, like creative writing. Even in like traditional essays, like for certain classes, I would try to put my flair, my touch, my personality in the writing, and I feel like that obviously translates to public speaking, um, interview skills. I guess all the English classes really helped me. Film classes, obviously, and even being on the football team, being able to, at least when I was on the football team, we dealt with a ton of setbacks, a ton of trials, a ton of trials, and so it's up to especially like when you're an upperclassman, junior, senior, you kind of got to step up and face those trials head on because you've worked your way up to be in those positions. Catherine was saying how Travis was saying being comfortable, being uncomfortable. That's like the main thing I would stress to a lot of kids who are looking to be at like a high quality school. Like you have to be a high quality person. You got to do what people who are uncomfortable like wouldn't do.
Yeah, it's one of the chapters in my most recent book, where it's get comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Hmm.
That's kind of like my MO as well. I mean, I think there's a lot of people who use that mantra, but I think it really, I mean, I don't want to dig into this past year, but if there's ever been something that's been uncomfortable that's been thrust on all of us, it was what did we do through COVID? How did we get comfortable with that? And how did we find joy in our life in a place, in a time where so many of us are dependent on other people and other things to find our joy? And I think it really forced us to look inside and say, okay, here's my joy. And now hopefully we have that joy and we can align with other people in other places and have even more joy. So I think that's the hardest part, I think, of going to college. And I think, you speak so beautifully about the Posse Foundation. And I mean, it's clear why you were selected.
Thank you.
You light up when you talk about it. So thanks for sharing that. Because man, I'm all about dreams. I just want people to live their dreams. You're also wonderful. I just have a couple more questions. So poor grades. people get worried about grades, and I'm sure at Viewpoint you did pretty well because you're in a pretty great place. But tell me about grades in college. Have any of you gotten C's, D's, or F's? Were you able to bounce back from that? You know, like, is it the end of the world if you struggle? Natalie, how about you?
I have not gotten any bad grades yet, but
You.
to be completely honest. But I will say that it's definitely not the end of the world. I mean, it's one of those things where I think the difference is that you have less assignments in college classes. So every single one counts towards your grade in a bigger way. Because at Viewpoint, you have a lot of little quizzes, a lot of like daily assignments that you turn in that help towards your grade. But in college, it's really sometimes you have 3 midterms, a final, and a research paper, and that's it. And so you have to, try your hardest in every single one, and that can be really stressful. I think it's just a matter of, doing the best you can. If you need help, asking for it, and not being afraid to. All the things we've talked about.
Well, you learned how to manage your time over all these summers, which I never learned. Like, and I think that's probably why you're doing pretty well, because time management's brutal.
Yeah, I'm no way perfect. No
No,
way. There's
right?
a lot of
No,
procrastination that happens. A lot of watching Netflix and realizing that an hour has gone by, not sticking to schedules, late nights doing research papers. That happens sometimes. It's part of college, I think.
right.
But I think it's just whenever I have like a really stressful week that I know is going to be a lot, that's when I pull out my planner and really try and create a plan for myself. And sometimes I get off of that, but as long as I get it all done in the end,
Right. You have a planner to pull out. Like, that's the thing. Like, you know how to plan. Because I've done, so many conversations with so many students, and the time management stuff is just, it's rough because some people got through their years at Viewpoint and didn't have to study as much. And I think it's the student who has to study who's like, oh my gosh, this is harder, or doesn't know how to manage their time, can really throw them. Catherine, did you have any academic distress or discomfort?
I mean, I'd say I'm doing all right. I think that sort of just reiterating what Natalie said, and also something that my friend, we were having a conversation about grades where I had a friend who was in a STEM class, and it's one of those STEM classes where everyone gets a D on the test and then they curve it at the end kind of thing.
Yeah.
But, she was totally freaking out about it. And my friend said something that I thought was really interesting. And she's like, how many more hours do you think you would have had to study in order to get a better grade? And my friend said some ridiculous number. And she's like, would those numbers of hours be worth it to get a grade higher in this class when there's so many other amazing things you can be doing at college, kind of thing, which I thought was really insightful and is something that I now remember when I get a grade that I'm not totally happy with, where it's, I did my best on this. I could have spent 6 more hours editing this essay, but instead I, went to this club meeting that I loved and got a lot out of. So I'm going to enjoy that and continue to work hard.
You went to Art Reach UCLA and you were teaching art classes to kids with chronic illnesses, which is a beautiful thing to do. And the Bruin Literature Club and the Bruin Visual Arts Club and the Archaeology Mentorship Program. And I mean, there's all those other wonderful things that are really valuable, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And people don't recognize that. I think that's the joy of being where you are.
Yeah.
Those are all accurate, right? You do all those things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You included the list, so I mean, I try to make it look natural for this.
Yeah, the plug, yeah.
It's cool stuff, but I mean, it's like it's balance, right? And it's investing. And Natalie, you're performing and you're involved with Hillel and Applause for a Cause and Wave Production, and you're performing in shows and acting, and you're in a sorority too. What sorority are you in?
I'm in Alpha Chi Omega.
So you're in Alpha Chi Omega. You're in a sorority. Was that hard to get in?
Not. I don't know.
That's a weird question. But like, was the process? How about the process? Was the process exhausting and difficult, or was Rush a pleasant experience for you?
Here's the thing. What I'm gonna say Catherine will probably disagree with me, and most people will probably disagree with me. I actually had a good experience. And most people say it's exhausting, horrible, so superficial, all of these things, which a lot of that is true in a way. But for me, it was really just I went in with no expectations, thinking if I don't like a place, I'm going to drop. And if I find a place I like, then awesome. And so it worked out for me. And I saw it as like I get to meet all of these new people and have a lot of conversations with people I would normally never run into. But I will say that you would walk along the halls of the student center where we would do our rankings at the end of the night, and you would see people crying around every corner. And there were a lot of people who got very attached. And it's not a fun process. It's a very corrupt process in a lot of ways. So it's different for everyone.
Catherine, what would you say about sorority rush?
Well, my immediate thought was that I don't know anyone who's had a good rush experience, but so Natalie has proven me wrong. But it was especially that first day you talked, or at least the way it works at UCLA is you talk to like all of the houses, and you're there from 7 a.m. until 9 p.m, and you're talking the entire time. So I was exhausted and lost my voice by the end of the day, and I also went into it not super intent on joining a sorority. Like that was never something that I was like looking for in a college. But I do think that there is a level of, or at least for me, of attachment that came with it, because you're having these conversations and you think that you had this great conversation and then that house doesn't call you back or whatever. And it feels like a judgment of you or your character or something, when, in reality, you had a 5-minute conversation with somebody. They don't know you. They don't know anything about you other than what you did that summer and what your major is. So sort of stepping back and getting some perspective on that, I think, is hard to do in the moment, but definitely important.
That's hard. But Natalie, I like the way that you approached it, where it was less about want me, like me. And I think Catherine, I mean, you as well, that was kind of your attitude with UCLA even, it was, I don't need anyone to want me to feel okay, to be okay. And when you approached Rush through this lens of, I have this opportunity to meet all these people in different places, and it's more about what do I like as opposed to who likes me, all of a sudden you have all the power. But that's a really hard thing to do, especially when you arrive on campus, you don't know a soul, and you're trying to find connection, and you feel like you connect, which I know the rejection part, Catherine, is painful. But the perspective, I love having both perspectives. It's really helpful. Donovan, are you in a fraternity?
No, I'm not.
No, so you didn't go through Rush.
No, I did not.
But you have your community. You're given all of that through your Posse Foundation connections, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. And through your major. All right, so I got 2 more questions for you. Well, actually 3 questions. We'll be really fast, okay? 3 questions. So one is there something you wish that Viewpoint had done that could have prepared you better for your college experience? Something that perhaps was lacking, where they could work a little harder or be more intentional in some aspect. And if you don't have something, that's okay too. But you have an opportunity to be honest and critical. Dr. Steiger would like to know. If no one has anything, that's okay. I haven't asked this question before. Sounds like you all seem to be pretty happy.
This is just something that kind of shocked me when I got to college, was that the exclusivity that comes with a lot of clubs. I don't know if that's specific to Northwestern, but here it's hard to get involved in things sometimes. And usually there's an application process and an interview process and things for just doing extracurriculars sometimes. And at Viewpoint, you really get to do everything that you want. You can join clubs, no problem. You're there to learn what you like and to explore different things. And so I actually commend Viewpoint on that. And it's just a hard thing going into college and not having that experience, but that's really what the real world is like. So it's just this weird balance, but it's definitely something that I didn't necessarily expect going into college that I think could be useful to know.
Thank you for bringing that up, because I have heard that so many times, especially at highly selective schools, that you get in, and then having access to the programs and the activities and the organizations that really move you and excited you, you can't always get in. And I think that that happens to a lot of students who end up transferring,
Yeah.
is they don't find their people in places because having access is something that can take a longer time than they expect. So that's great. And just looking at your experiences, Natalie, I mean, I know you have the performing arts pieces where you have to audition and be invited and included, but then I saw also the spiritual organizations, being involved with Hillel and Chabad. You don't have to you don't have to be invited, right? Like you have access, right?
And I remember you saying in your talk something about go where there's free food, and mentioned Hillel, and I actually remember that.
Oh, that is so cool. It's like that's really nice. I'm glad that that resonated, but it's so true. It's like wherever you go, and this isn't just a college thing. This is just a life thing. You find the friendliest people, not the coolest people. It's the kindest people. The kindest people who do things you love to do, and you build relationships with them, and they're so nice that, like you were talking about earlier, Catherine, if you're shy, these people, they kind of make it easy to lead the way. And then I know, Donovan, you were talking about networking, which I think the word networking, like, makes a lot of people shut down. I don't know if you all agree with
Mhm.
that, because I think networking is just meeting interesting people who you share interests with, you know, and and then that builds into something else. But anyway, it's interesting. I enjoy these conversations, and thanks for bringing that up, Natalie. That's really helpful. I think for other people to know that just getting in is the first part, but then what happens once you're there. And I think even for those seniors and juniors who are investigating schools, talking to someone like Natalie and Catherine and Donovan and saying, once I get there, here's what I love to do. Is that something I'm going to be able to do right away? And the answer may be, no. Catherine, is it like that at UCLA? Do you get access to everything, or do you have to fill out applications and go through interviews?
Yeah, I'd say similarly to what Natalie was saying, pretty much everything you have to do sort of an intense interview process, and even things that you wouldn't expect. Um, so I know for a lot of clubs that I was looking at that are like service oriented, I was a camp counselor a whole bunch of summers. Like I really like kids. And that sort of thing where it was, we have 3 spots, go kind of thing, which is why I kind of liked finding other clubs. Like with Outreach, you just join the group me and you sign up and you go. So that was super accessible for me and then something that I've really enjoyed.
Yeah, that's great. So finding that thing, at
Yeah.
least that one place. So when you land on campus, it's like, I have this, and all of you have had that experience, which is awesome. So I want to know your most uncomfortable experience in college, and how are you able to get through that? And if you can be as specific as possible about what it was and who helped you to get through it, because what I've learned is whenever there's something uncomfortable, there's always a person and there's always a place where you're able to find answers. And I think it's wonderful for other people to see people who are as exceptional as you just be able to share something that made you uncomfortable. Donovan, I'm not sure if you have something or if you're searching for something.
No, I'm thinking. I'm thinking. I don't know if anybody else has one.
We can come back and just to
Yeah,
plant
for
the
sure.
seed. Think about when you were crying, Donovan. Think about if you've cried. Think about if you thought of quitting. Think about where you were tested. Think about rejection and where you were supported. And it might be mild, but maybe where you questioned yourself and your abilities, changing the majors, realizing something about yourself that maybe you didn't. I know also you said you've evolved from who you were as a freshman in high school, freshman in the upper school to now. So there might be something seated in that experience. But Natalie, you look ready. You have an uncomfortable experience. I would love to hear your uncomfortable experience and how you got through it. So spill it.
I mean, right now I'm debating which one to tell.
Oh my gosh, you could tell too. You can give like, a small and a big or whatever. Short and long.
Okay, well, one thing that I don't know how detailed I will be is I had problems with my first year roommate. I had a very, unfortunately, not lucky experience like Catherine did. It was a bond where there was a lot of passive aggressiveness,
Mm.
and if something went wrong, I was usually the person who was like, okay, let's talk about it. Let's fix it. And the other person was maybe not of that mindset and was like, oh, she won't notice. She won't notice that this happened. Let's just brush it under the rug. And that just made for a lot of uncomfortableness. I definitely ranted to my mom. That was always a great thing, just FaceTiming my parents when she was not home and ranting. Um, but it was hard because we ended up having a lot of mutual friends since we got along with people, the same people like within our dorm, that I couldn't really go to them because I didn't want to put them in that situation. Usually, how I would deal with it is making sure to bring up things when they were wrong, even if she would pretend like it wasn't a big deal, and making sure she knew if I was angry about something, and just trying to approach that with, an empathetic lens, trying to not yell or anything, but just talk about things like civilized people, and also ranting to people outside of school or outside of that circle. I think were the two things that got me through that. But yeah, I would also say something that I think could be important to bring up is, on a safety note, sometimes walking late at night as a woman by yourself is a scary thing. And for me, even though Evanston is known to be a safe neighborhood, usually I tend to like call a close friend, and just stay on the phone with them the whole time. I also have pepper spray in my pocket, just in case. I generally try to not walk by myself, but sometimes you have to. And in those situations, which have happened a few times this year, sometimes it's just being on the phone, pretending you're distracted, and going with your day, not acknowledging people, and keeping to yourself as much as possible.
Yeah, you have to be vigilant. Being in a city, I mean, it's Evanston is you know a suburb, but it's I think it's very city. I mean, you have the L, you have lots of different people with different interests coming and going. So, and not being afraid of being rude, because
Yeah,
it's like, you know what, like, I don't have to be nice to everybody if I'm uncomfortable. I
yeah.
think sometimes people worry about being nice, and I think they'll compromise their safety or awkward. So, thanks for bringing that up. The roommate, was that a random roommate, or was it someone who you kind of like met through Facebook and you're like, oh, we're gonna be friends?
It was a mutual friend who recommended the two of us and like kind of brought us together, and we just had a FaceTime call, asked the questions, like compatibility questions, and we like seemed to get along over FaceTime. So you never know. You never know. But it's also temporary. I think that's important to
Yeah.
remember, that you don't have to be friends with your roommate. You really don't. You just have to like live in the same room. And I know some people who did move rooms, like that is a possibility. But really, if you can stand to be in the same habitat as the other person, and you can just get through it, you'll find your friends elsewhere. You know.
Right. All you have to do is coexist.
Yeah.
Right. Then the baseline is so low. The bar is so low.
Mhm.
Right. I think that's wonderful. And if you expect someone to be a friend, I don't know if you remember this, then there's requirements for behavior. Like someone has to invite you to meals and include you with their friends. And it's like all of a sudden if someone doesn't do that, then there's resentment, which it sounds like, you had to deal with that,
Yeah.
of someone who just who didn't get that. Catherine, your most uncomfortable experience and how you got through it.
So my first quarter at UCLA, I fell backwards off my bed and got a concussion.
Oh no.
Um, I'm fine. I was fine. But it was towards the beginning of the quarter and it was right around midterms. It was a Sunday night and I woke up and I had a midterm Monday and I, obviously could not take my midterm. And I think that reaching out to my professors and like teaching assistants was extremely uncomfortable, especially because I felt like I'm new and I have something to prove almost. I don't want to be going into this with the first big assignment where I'm already backing out. And on top of that, I'm not feeling well. And on top of that, I'm not home. So what do I do when I'm not feeling well, when I'm not at home and I have to take care of myself kind of thing and get myself to the doctor. In that, my roommate was actually extremely helpful. She like sat down with me while I emailed my professors and just sort of having a friend there and who was basically just telling me, say this sort of thing when I just felt so overwhelmed and wasn't feeling well was super, super helpful. But I remember hitting send and just feeling like so anxious until they responded because my anticipation was that they were going to be, you can't possibly make up your midterm, it's a bad excuse. And obviously none of them were like that. Yeah, just feeling super uncomfortable with asking for help when I needed it. And I felt like I almost shouldn't be asking for help because I was just starting in college and I should be like a, big girl kind of thing. Was really uncomfortable, and getting over that and realizing that it's okay and a good thing to ask for help was great.
That's great. And were they all receptive and supportive?
Yeah, they were all super nice. I think pretty much all of them were basically said something along the lines of take as long as you need sort of thing. So
Oh, I'm so glad. I know everybody wants to know, how did you fall off your bed and hit your head? If you're open to answering that part of.
yeah, it was such a lame story. It's one of those where I wish I had a better story to tell. Um, but no, I was dancing in my room. Um, and it was like 6 o'clock. It was just a nightmare. But and I lay down on my bed sideways. So if this is my bed, this was me, and I just slid off the back and landed right on my head.
Oh,
It was,
six
and then
a.m.
I was embarrassed to tell people that that's how I did it.
You alone?
No, I was with my roommate. We were just sort of hanging out.
And 6 p.m., not 6 a.m., right?
Yeah, 6 p.m. We
Right.
were just having a good, you know what I
Oh,
mean?
right. That's so fun. I mean, I'm sorry you
Yeah.
hurt yourself, but you were like, it's so innocent.
No, it was a bad story. I had nothing to tell people that was fun or funny. Like it was just, yeah.
It's nice. It's just a nice story. Well, I'm glad you're well, and thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. And Donovan, did you come up with something? Do you have something that made you uncomfortable, Donovan? And how
Yeah.
did you get through that?
When I was talking about in my viewpoint experience, how I was a people pleaser, specifically being, black kid, one of the only black kids in your classes or, in your grade. I felt like I was a people pleaser in the sense that I was conforming to, the perception that my peers had of me. Like I was, kind of becoming that token black kid in the sense that, they would say certain things, I'll let it slide. And I felt like I was losing a bit of myself to, become, their perception. I felt like when I got to Tulane, I thought I had overcome that. I was my own person. In Greek life, it's a big thing on Tulane's campus. And I said I didn't rush, but I met this really cool kid that I worked with, and he was like a part of this fraternity, and I was really vibing with that fraternity. But the compromise was I would be the only black person in the fraternity, and I had felt that like it wasn't there were no overt microaggressions. There wasn't anything crazy. I didn't face any racism or anything, but I had just felt that it got to a point where he was cool and whatnot, and then he started trying to like recruit me, and like it kind of became a little like heavily implied that it was due to let's say like a they wanted diversity in the fraternity or whatever. And so it was either I could join this fraternity and just kind of be that token black kid and not be the person I am today, or I can, be myself and not compromise that for a certain experience. Because Greek life, I mean, I'm sure you guys can attest, it can get clicky. Um, and so I ended up not joining the fraternity, obviously. The act of joining that fraternity was definitely uncomfortable. The act of turning away from it was uncomfortable. But in doing that, I felt as if I was able to, truly see the type of person I was and see the type of person I was becoming.
Yeah. How do you go through your years at Viewpoint as someone who doesn't look like everybody else? And how are you able to work through that and just be comfortable in your skin? Was it
Mhm,
hard for you? Because I know you just kind of mentioned that was a little bit of a conflict during your
mhm.
younger years, and you seems like you've been more intentional about seeking a community where you don't have to be as aware of your role. How do you do that and be comfortable and balanced?
It's interesting because obviously there are times when it's blatant and times when it's not. And whether you're, the only black person in the room or you're like everybody else in the room is black, you have to know when to turn like that I guess lens on and off. Like you have to realize, okay, because I'm a film major and the film department is really small and it's not the most diverse uh it's not the most diverse group, but I'm able to be in the room, not really, not not like looking outside of myself and understanding the race dynamics within the room. It's I'm able to just contribute my ideas as like my own person, and I'm able to look at other people beyond skin color, and look at their ideas and look at and I'm able to interpret how they are as a person. I don't know if that made complete sense, but there's basically being in rooms where it's apparent that you're, only person of color, or being in rooms where everyone else is a person of color. You have to be able to turn that lens on and off. You have to know when, because I mean, if I was always cognizant of my race and somebody said a microaggression, somebody said something subtle, a subtle stereotype about me, like if somebody said, "Oh, you're on the basketball team," I would, if I was always on 10 in terms of like viewing life with a racial lens, that comment would run in my mind all the time. But I've gotten to a point, I mean, being at Viewpoint, you know being in that environment prepared me for Tulane, because if I hear something like that now, or even, I mean, me and my friends will be at parties and there will be drunk kids and they'll say maybe a slur or something, I'm able to turn it off, like in the sense that that doesn't affect me, because I know that, you know, I know what I can contribute. I know what my diversity is beyond my skin color. And so I think that's the biggest thing, understanding, that it's okay to turn off that filter at certain times when it can accommodate you, but also reading the room and understanding how your race plays into different dynamics. And so, I mean, I mean, W.E.B. Du Bois talks about the double consciousness. Like it's like, you know, it's a, it's very specific to certain situations. But I mean, you have to have control of like the lens. That, I guess that's the best way I can describe it. You have
Yeah.
to be in control of like which lens you're perceiving life. Because if you're always viewing it from one lens, you're not gonna, see it from the other. And that's just beyond skin color. That's just life.
Yeah. I th- I imagine having people in your corner who have been there and done it, who are 2 or 3 years beyond,
Hmm.
who could just reinforce this idea of, hey, I turned my lens off during this moment, and I don't know how I feel about that. I think
Hmm.
because that's kind of I think that could be really difficult to reconcile, especially when you're in an uncomfortable new situation. And
Yeah,
just
definitely.
knowing when and how. And it sounds like you found that. Is the Black Student Union at Viewpoint, are there a lot of students that are part of the Black Student Union?
I think when I was attending Tulane, it had a few students. I think because sometimes I'll see Viewpoint post certain things. I think it might be even bigger now. And so,
That's a high school group, the Black Student Union?
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like a club. I mean, I'm sure there's um, like Asian Student Union at Viewpoint as well. I could be completely wrong, but I know there's cultural clubs um, that you can, if you pertain to that, that culture, you can, enter
Yeah.
that club.
I
Or
do
you
too.
don't have to be black to be in Black Student Union, but
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you just have to be someone who is interested and
Mhm.
interesting, and everybody welcomes each
Exactly.
other, which I think
Yeah,
people don't
exactly.
recognize. Yeah, I do a lot of these conversations with underrepresented populations, and it's just so fascinating to see that transition and the change. And it's like finding your people in places. And it's
Hmm.
the same. It's the same everywhere. But that's a really interesting perspective on how you didn't want to. The choice of going into the fraternity would have meant having to view the world through that similar lens, where you're constantly having to adjust which lens you're seeing the world through, which could be exhausting, I imagine.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, and choosing not to do that simply so that you don't have to constantly be asking yourself or put in that position. Right.
Exactly.
That's accurate. And then Natalie, when it comes to your identity and working through, you know, recognizing your identity and finding connection and community, is there anything that you can contribute to that as well?
Yeah. I mean, first, thank you for sharing all of that. I really appreciate it myself.
Thank
For
you.
me, I'm Latina and I'm a Latina Jew, and so that means that I identify as both white and Latina. And sometimes it's interesting because like I've always been incredibly proud of my identity, and I grew up in a household where those identities were very mixed, and so I never thought that that was a weird thing. I always, just embraced it. And I think what's interesting is that because I'm white passing, when I came to college, my race became a really big deal. And I felt like there were times when I had to like prove that I was Latino, which made no sense to me. I had one very uncomfortable experience where I should have mentioned this before, but I had a singing lesson with one of the singing teachers here, and I brought a song in Spanish, and I was really excited about it for doing it for an audition and everything, and I wanted to work it. And he told me, "Oh, you're not Latina enough to sing this. You don't look Latina enough to sing in Spanish." And I kind of just paused. It was like the first moment where I had anyone say something like that to me, where like you're not Latina enough, and I'm like, what the hell does that even mean? Um, there's no like one way to look Latina. First of all, it was very upsetting to me, and I remember just going to my dorm and crying because I had no idea what to do. And in that situation, I told him, I was like, well, that's who I am. Should I not show that off? Like that's the whole point of this audition. And then he just, stopped talking and realized what he had said. But it was just one of those moments where like 10 seconds of courage, and then you go to your dorm and like break it up. And I remember calling my parents and just being like, how do I deal with those situations? And it's just one of those things where I had to like gain a new form of courage, where I didn't have to prove who I was, and I just had to, sing in Spanish when I want to sing in Spanish and be who I am without feeling the need to announce my identity to other people. And so I think, had like a reverse experience to you, Donovan. I never really thought of myself as a person of color because I looked white. And so coming to college and hearing that terminology and finding out how to navigate that was and has been very confusing. So I think it's just, there have been other people who I've related to who've had that experience, and I talked to them about it. I think also just standing my own ground and knowing who I am and not letting other people decide who I am. I think it's very important, but it's a difficult thing for sure.
Yeah. How do you prove that if you don't look a certain way? And having somebody even question something that's a part of you, is it your mom or your dad, or what's
It's both.
your origin?
Yeah, my mom is Mexican and my dad's Chilean. So it's my great grandparents who are white.
Okay. And it's like, for me, it's interesting because you're Natalie Friedman, and I wouldn't even think to say, you know, so tell me about your cultural identity and where you face challenges. And I think that that's just so telling, that you have a story, and I didn't even ask you your story. And Catherine, I didn't ask you your story. And Donovan, I'm more likely to ask you your story because of how you look. And it's just something that we see. When I see it, I see you in a place where you're doing such incredible things, and so many people don't recognize that they have all these incredible opportunities. Um, that's the way that I see it. I get excited, because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is great. But then there's all these other stories that I don't know. And I love that we can have this dialogue And I even mentioned in the beginning, like, if I say anything that makes anyone uncomfortable, let me know. And, I really do want to know, because all I want is for everybody to be happy and to find joy. But those things that we're talking about, they're sensitive, they're hard. So thanks for making it comfortable for me to also be able to talk about that, and Natalie as well, and Catherine. Hey, Catherine, do you have your identity? Is there anything that you any challenges that you've had? I mean, I should ask you, because clearly there are no assumptions that anyone can make.
Yeah, no, I don't think I really have anything to contribute, but thank you both so much for sharing. Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. This is wonderful, and I'm really grateful for everybody being so vulnerable and out there. I have one last question for you, and then we're going to wrap this up. The question is, if you could go back in time, Natalie and Catherine and Donovan, if you can go back in time, you're at Viewpoint, you're walking through the halls, you look like you look today, you somehow are able to get through security. People don't recognize you in your new form or your evolved form, and you're able to actually see, like Natalie, you see upper school you in some type of production, and you like open up a practice room, and this person sees you like you see yourself. Then you get to walk up to someone, you get to walk up to you, freshman you, and say, "Hey, Natalie, here's what you need to know." What would you tell you that would have made your life a little easier?
I think for now it would just be like keep following your passions and know that you're worthy.
I mean, that's because knowing you're worthy, especially when you're an artist. I mean, you get beat up. That's hard. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that will carry you, knowing you're going to be okay. Catherine, if you could go back in time and give you a little bit of wisdom, freshman you, what would you tell you?
I think something along the lines of you know who you are more than you think you do. And it's important to accept that and be yourself. And it's also okay to tell people no, and you don't have to give an excuse. You can just say no if you don't want to in so many situations in life. Because I think that that's something that I had a big learning curve on, of always wanting to, like, people pleasing, like we were talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, going full circle. It's really hard to say no when you like to please people, but you end up miserable if you don't set boundaries and can't express what doesn't feel right. Donovan, if you can go back to the upper school and talk to ninth grade you, what would you tell you?
Definitely follow your passions, um, practice your writing, become an excellent writer. And then another major thing, I would tell myself to invest in the stock market, like learn that stuff. Cause like over the COVID, over the whole stay at home thing, that summer we got sent home from school. That was like something I had picked up on. And now that almost is equally a passion to me is, film and English. And if I had known what I had known like back freshman year, I would be an animal. But but yeah.
Like an investing animal?
Yes, like yeah, an investing animal, a money printer.
Money, what would you, well, I mean, you're still so young. You have so much time to print money. What would you invest in?
I mean, I day trade, so I mean, I don't really do like long-term positions, but I mean, there's too many. I mean, Tesla, obviously, um, all the big names, Tesla, Square, PayPal, even some cryptocurrencies, if you're into
Hey,
that.
yeah, let's do this,
There's
because we're gonna go 5 year. I'm gonna find you in 5 years. Okay. We'll do this again. Okay. We'll do this again. I want you to talk to future Donovan and tell him three investments that you made that were like the smartest investments, so that future Donovan
right
can,
now.
yeah, 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 yeah. Be like, hey, future Donovan, I'm so grateful you invested in these three things, because I know that you just crushed it. You willing to do
um,
that? You want to do that?
sure, I could do that. Yeah. Oh, this would be crazy if it hit. But I'm like big on cryptocurrency right now. But there's this one, Future Donovan. Hold on to your Ethereum and hold on to your Ripple. Those are like two of my main
What are
ones.
they right now? Just so we have some context.
Uh, Ethereum's at like 3,400 right now, and Ripple is at like $1.60. So in 5 years, we'll see what those numbers are.
So Ripple. All right, because Ripple, anyone can get into Ripple.
Yeah, anyone can get into Ripple. Yeah.
Why are you so hot on Ripple?
It essentially works as a digital dollar, like, and there's a finite amount of it. And out of all the cryptocurrencies, that would be the most likely. Like banks are already using it to exchange amongst each other. And honestly, I mean, I'll be on Twitter so much, and Twitter also for all the seniors or whatever, freshmen in high school. Twitter, you can learn so much free information off of Twitter. That's really what got me into stocks and even marketing, um, like marketing type of stuff. Twitter is a great resource. There's a lot of free information. But this one guy I connected with on Twitter was super big on cryptocurrency, back, back in like March 2020, and so I mean his belief in it almost just like makes me feel a lot better about it. Um, because he taught me all about it, and yeah, he has very high conviction, and so I just follow whatever goes up. So
Wow, that's cool. Well, good. You know what? I find it fascinating. We got a little bonus here with that. I'm gonna look into Ripple. You got
yeah,
you got you got you, I think we're all gonna look into Ripple. Maybe all of us can just put in like $20 into Ripple. And then we'll come back in 5 years and we'll just laugh at like how ridiculous it's either going to be worth, $20 or, who knows? Oh,
yeah,
that's good.
exactly.
That's good. Well, this has been wonderful. Before we say goodbye, is there anything that anybody needs to clear up? Anything that anybody wants to revisit? I always give everyone a chance when they just think back on our conversation because we've talked a lot and we've shared a lot. You all good with everything? Wonderful. If there's anybody watching who wants to reach out to Natalie or Catherine or Donovan, we have their contact information. They'll get back to you. They want to help you. They want to be in your corner. I want to be in your corner. I want to thank Viewpoint School for being in everyone's corner who is here today. I'm grateful to contribute and so humbled and honored that I had the chance to visit with all of you. So thank you all so much for being so generous with your time. I'm so grateful to have our panelists here. Thank you, Viewpoint School, for being in everyone's corner. I'm so grateful to be in your corner. I want to help you all however I can. And anyone who has questions, anybody who wants to reach out to our panelists, please check out their profiles, reach out to them. They want to be in your corner. And of course, I want to be there as well. I'm Harlan Cohn. This has been a college conversation, and I look forward to continuing to be in your corner. Thanks, everyone.